But I think money is just a means to an end, not the end all and be all. I could have $1 billion right now, but I could be trapped in somewhere I don't want to be with people I don't want to be with. If I couldn't play music, I'd be very sad, even if I had $1 billion.
I know you eventually had a band when you worked for Facebook, but were there any breadcrumbs of anything that you're doing today back when you were in those earlier years in business school? Were you like playing music? Were you
Yeah,
meditating, doing anything?
I was part of the HBS show, which is a musical show that the students write and put together. So that took up a big chunk of my spring of, I think it was my second year. Yeah, that was a big commitment. Yeah, so I was playing guitar even during business school. And then I didn't play as much once I got out into the workforce.
Give us a little snapshot of your working world. What was that? What was happening there? I know you did Pepsi.
Yeah, so
In China.
I was a consultant at McKinsey and Company. It's probably the most prestigious management consulting firm, and then got recruited to go to PepsiCo to be a marketing director. And I play the guitar here and there. I think I played it for a couple company events just for fun, and then ended up at Facebook. And at Facebook, after a year, I started a band with a few colleagues, and over the course of 3 years, I think I did like 30 some gigs and had a blast. It was a cover band. It was originally an originals band, and then I started a cover band, left the originals band, and really had fun with the cover band.
Did you, when you were working in these companies, did you feel like I found my passion, I found my calling, like this is it, this is my path?
At Facebook, I really enjoyed it. It was exciting. We were winning. We were growing all the time, and it was great people that I got to work with, and just loved my time there. And then I also really loved music. And after I left Facebook, I considered going to the Guitar Institute of Technology and studying to be a guitarist. So I definitely consider that. I didn't end up doing it, but that was on the mind.
Talk about the difference in mindset working at Facebook versus working for McKinsey and working at Pepsi.
I think working at a big company, an established company, the appetite for innovation and growth is, it's incremental. There's a lot of like, we've always been doing it this way, so we'll keep doing it and we'll change a little bit. And at Facebook, I was there when there were about 50 million users. And by the time I left, it was about 500 million users. And so that's about a 10x growth. Most big companies don't experience that type of growth. And at Facebook, that was just a very unique time. It was kind of like being there in the teenage years, when you're really spurting. And I remember being there at 50 million users. MySpace was at 120 million users. And I thought, man, if we get to 100 million users or 120, that would be a big deal. And a lot of the leadership were already planning for 1 billion users. So they were looking at Google, which at the time probably had 1 billion or a couple billion users. And they thought the competition was Google and not MySpace. And I thought that was very, it was eye-opening for me. To think that big. They had their sights set on something quite grand.
Do you think that's unique to Facebook or these tech companies? Do you think that people in general should be thinking bigger than they actually think, having gone through that experience?
Both. I think there's probably a role for both, and maybe not everyone's meant to be serving at such a large scale, because it comes with its own set of challenges and its own it's intense. And as I look back, there's nothing wrong with having also a small website that helps smaller communities, but it was definitely exciting to be in that one. So I liken it to be, it'd be fun. Like, I think of my time at Facebook as being with the Chicago Bulls when Jordan was there. Mm-hmm. It was truly that type of feeling. But also there's nothing wrong with being part of a community league and just playing hoops, and it all depends on what you want to get out of it.
So that sort of dark night of the soul moment that you talked about in our earlier interview, that was just before Facebook, right?
There was one right before Facebook. There was one right after Facebook.
Okay.
There's one of those.
Yeah. So the one after Facebook was what led to the Hoffman process. The one before Facebook was kind of what led to Facebook.
Exactly.
And you were in a very fortunate position getting in so early in the early days of Facebook that you got stock options and stuff. So it kind of made things a little more comfortable. But let me ask you this. People, I think, imagine that once they reach a certain financial point, once they hit their number, they're going to be happier, right? What was your experience?
Yes, it definitely helps. But at the time, I was in a relationship throughout my working at Facebook, and then that ended. And all I wanted was to get that relationship back. So I think money is certainly one thing that we can all long for, but there are other things that we all long for. And, maybe it's health, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's, money is just one thing. And it certainly helps to have it, but I don't think it's the end all and be all.
So you didn't tangibly feel happier once you kind of hit your financial goals at that time in your life?
It was a short burst. I think what it meant though was by having money, like I would have community, I would have friends, I would be, having more fun, and to some extent, yeah. But I think life is also about having the right people and the right sense of purpose and the right, like being able to do things that I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just as important. And the money certainly can enable freedom so that I can take my time and do more things that I enjoy. But I think money is just a means to an end, not the end all and be all. I could have $1 billion right now, but I could be trapped in somewhere I don't want to be with people I don't want to be with doing, can't, like if I couldn't play music, I'd be very sad, even if I had $1 billion.
Or comparing yourself to Elon Musk and going, "Oh my God, I'm still broke. I need to have $100 billion so I can have access to the things that he has access to." So talk about Hoffman Process and the importance. What does that describe? What that's like for someone who's never been, and how did that kind of shape your perspective on your path?
I think the most important thing I got out of it was a week. It's a week of deep inner work. It's about 16 hours of deep inner work every day. It's like a boot camp for your soul. It was all about looking inward and finding my own answers. And I thought that was really different than anything I'd experienced. I think most of our society is trying to influence us in one way or the other, trying to get us to buy something, to feel a certain way, to be a certain way, to live a certain way. And this was a week of time where they just held space for me to go in and find my own answers. And that was, revolutionary. That was just mind blowing for me because I'd never experienced anything like that. I grew up in a household where my parents, especially my dad, was constantly telling me what to do, what to think, what to believe. And I didn't have the space to kind of tune into my own intuition.
What was a day in the life like at Hoffman? You didn't have your phone. You didn't have any gadgets.
Wake up. There'd be like a check-in with, we had 40 students. There were 5 teachers. So there were 8. We had small groups. So each teacher had 8 participants. And so, at breakfast, we'd check in and there'd be like a prompt or a question we'd answer right in the morning. And the teacher would check in with or maybe there would be like an assignment from the night before. And my teacher would, we'd check in, have breakfast, and then we'd probably get into a room and we did a lot of visualizations, which I'd never done before. So we would close our eyes and we would be guided to experience things in our mind. And it was like, I think of it as it's like like a movie, but I got to be the lead actor in the movie. And it was like my life, and it was getting to write the story of my life. And that was really cool. There would be moments where we'd break off into small groups and then have some small group sharing. There were some exercises where they'd set up almost like a theatrical experience, and they would give us prompts and we would go through. I thought of it as, kind of like I get to write the story of my life over the course of a week, and I get to author how I wanted things to go. And that felt very empowering and very, just very freeing.
And what did you do differently after that experience?
I saw life differently. I wanted to be a lot more intentional and mindful about how I was living. They had this framework talking about how, we have 4 aspects to ourselves. We have a physical, an intellectual, and an emotional and spiritual. And I never really paid attention to the emotional and spiritual aspects of myself. So, and I got plugged into a network of other people who were doing emotional and spiritual work. So we would trade books, trade notes, check in. I started doing improv class. That was one of the suggestions that came out of my time at Hoffman. And the improv class was life-changing. And I started singing more, just tapping more into the artistic and emotional side of me.
And talk a little bit about the earlier days of Spirit Lab. It started in San Francisco around your birthday, right?
So for my birthday, I wanted to do something non-traditional. I didn't want to just rent out a bar and have everyone drunk. And I rented an art gallery. It was a rectangular shape, almost like a small gymnasium, and invited friends to come. When they arrived, I had different activities for them. It was almost like, think of it like a little adult summer camp. On one of the walls, there was a dream board where the question was, what's something you dream about doing one day, and what's one step you could take to go there, and the little Post-it notes. And so people started writing like dreams that they have, and then starting to think about what's one thing they could do to go after that dream. There was a station set up for people to just paint, and I bought little 3x5 canvases, so very small, and they could paint something in, call it 10, 15 minutes. And I still actually have a lot of those blank canvases that are now painted at the house. And there was like a smoothie bar, so no alcohol. It was just healthy refreshments. Then for the actual program, I started off with some meditation, and then getting people to tune into their bodies, then a little bit of Tai Chi to start waking up the body, to start tapping, we were basically just hitting our body to start, moving around, move the energy around. And then we sang, and I had a voice teacher come and lead us in a couple songs. And what was different was originally the voice teacher wanted to do some scales, and I thought that was kind of boring. And all of a sudden on the radio, on my iPod, the song Lean on Me came on, and I hadn't heard that in years. And I was like, oh, that'd be the perfect song to use to get people to start singing, because everyone knows it. And then I projected the lyrics on a projector so that people could follow along easily. And that was beautiful. I still have that recording. I'll probably post it soon now that I think of it. And then the next song we did was Radioactive by Imagine Dragons, which I love the message about, when you tap into your purpose and your passion, then you feel radioactive and you have that sense of energy. And then I had everyone dancing, and I told everyone we were making a music video to kind of make it more interesting. And then we did an improv exercise after that. And then we ended the official program, and people just hung out. We did some karaoke and had some smoothies, and it was just a lovely time. So that was the beginning. Oh, and then I had a friend come and make some intention bracelets there. And that was lovely. I had other friends come and share different things, because I made it kind of a community event. I was partly responsible for the programming, but also other friends brought their gifts as well. So then when I moved to LA, I started having these gatherings at my house. I called it Spirit Sundays, where we'd get together and we would do similar activities. And so I did that for about a year.
This is the house in the hills.
Yeah. And luckily I had a nice view, which definitely helped. And the intention bracelets came out of that, because that was the hit out of all the activities that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the person who did the intention bracelets in San Francisco, was that the same person who reintroduced it to you in LA, or is that something you just?
No, she gave me the tools as a gift to bring down to LA. So I brought the tools down, and I didn't think much of it at the time. I had if you asked me the moment that I got the tools, like that I would end up starting a company around it, or it occurred to me, I just thought it was cool, and it would be one of probably many things that I would do. But I just kept doing it, and it just kind of took on a life of its own.
Mm. Yeah, it'd be like telling you were going to start up a painting company with those little index cards that people were painting on at Spirit Lab. It was like one of maybe 10 things.
Yeah, it was just
happening
activities, but that one, no one was really doing. People do other things like painting. I mean, there's, people do like paint nights. Mm-hmm. People do some, singing nights or other things to some extent, but yeah, that was really unique.
Well, it's almost a perfect way to connect really quickly and go deep really quickly, asking someone what's your word, that leads to a story, right? And then you can it's kind of like magic too, because you're you're stamping this word into this washer, and then you're tying it on their arm. And then I have something that remember the moment for a long time. And then it was very easy to capture content of, because then you could have a celebrity or whoever was around show their bracelet, and then you could post it, and then it can, that's what I saw in those earlier days. Was you had, like, I think Adrian, the guy from Entourage, and
Yeah, he was the first celebrity that we had wearing one.
yeah, and then culminating with Kanye West wearing a bracelet on the cover of Time magazine. What was the timeline between Adrian getting his and Kanye West wearing it on the cover of Time magazine?
Adrian was December of 2013.
Okay.
And Kanye was April of 2015. So a year and a half.
That's crazy. That's insane.
Yeah, it happens.
That is insane. So MyIntent ended up being the company that you started. How many maker kits and how many bracelets would you say exist in the world today after starting that in 2013?
Probably 100,000 maker kits, maybe 4 to 5 million bracelets in the world, somewhere in that range. I have to go pull the numbers, but it's somewhere in that range. Yeah.
All born out of Spirit Lab.
Yeah, all born out of an intention to just bring wellness to a lot of people.
Right. So when the pandemic hit, you began hosting these virtual gatherings that I feel like were sort of the precursor to what you're doing now. Would you consider that to be the case, or would you say that it came a little bit later?
Well, it's interesting.
Because I remember being at your house and you had me listening to We Are the World like 1,000 times, and all these songs that had these melodies that you could just sing, again and again and again.
Yeah, so the MyIntent Live was kind of like a hodgepodge. Like, it was, remember, we did a lot of different things. We had like breath work, we yoga, we did conversation lab, we had singing, we had dancing, we had just a lot of different things. Singing was one of them. So that, in a way, yeah, that was kind of like Spirit Lab had a lot of different activities. And so out of that set of activities, singing is the one that I love the most out of all those activities. And that's the one that now I'm using to take forward, because it's hard to take forward 10 different things. And also there's a lot of other people focused on just breath work or just dance or just yoga, but no one's really working on singing. So that's what I'm choosing to do.
Beautiful. So I would love to shift a little bit and just start a little semi-master class in how to start a movement, because you've started a movement already. I've started a movement. So I just want to talk about how you think about this inception phase of starting your newest movement, VOMO, and just kind of, in case someone out there wants to start something as well, and or get involved in what you're doing. I want to just kind of take it from the very first step into where we are today with the whole thing. So when you had the idea, when you said, okay, this is going to be an event where I'm going to have people singing and we're going to connect over music, right? When did that happen, and what occurred just before that made you say, now is the time?
It's a bit serendipitous. So during the pandemic, I tried this we called it MyIntent Live, this school offering a lot of different wellness practices for free over Zoom. That ended up, phasing out. And then I went through probably 6 months of pretty isolated, dark times. And as the world started to reopen, I saw friends at the singing circle, just in someone's living room singing. It just looked like a lot of fun. And I asked, what is it? And they said, oh, we meet every other Monday. Here's a WhatsApp group. Here, come join. So I joined it. And the first few times I went, I was pretty intimidated. I didn't lead anything. I just kind of watched, just observed, kind of, played along. I was still kind of in a coming out of this dark, traumatic phase. And then towards October, a few things had happened. I was invited to speak at this conference, and I hadn't spoken in over a year at this point. And they told me at this conference that there was going to be a cover band that was already there. And then I said, oh, okay. Like I've led group singing back in 2017. I've led it all my life, but I did a really big one back in 2017. And so I said, well, hey, this could be cool. Let me talk to the band. So I talked to the band, and we worked out that I was going to lead a few songs live with the audience. And that got me more confident in leading. And then I started thinking about my time at the singing circle. We call it the Unjam Circle. And I thought, well, for me to bring this to a lot of people, I would need to do some edits. Because one of the big challenges with the singing circle is people would suggest a song and most of us wouldn't know the song. And we'd have to fumble with our phones, try to pull up the lyrics. And then sometimes we still wouldn't know the song. It would just be hard. And I thought, well, what if we could just take parts of the song that we all knew and only did the songs that we all knew or could teach easily. So it's kind of like I took this raw thing and I just edited it, took kind of my Facebook growth hacker hat, and I made it more adapted, for public consumption or for, the beginning singer. And and at Facebook, one of the things I learned with the growth team is, look at the barriers to someone doing something and start systematically removing the barriers. And one of the biggest barriers to people singing is they don't know the lyrics. So we can fix that. And that's what I started doing. That's kind of the difference between the Unjam Circle versus like VOMO is I curate the lyrics very carefully so that people have an incredibly fun and a flowy, I call it a flowy experience where they don't have to be in their heads and try to remember a lot of stuff. It's a sing along, not, hey, you got to memorize a whole bunch of lyrics and perform it at the end. Because I've been to other singing experiences like that, where over the course of an hour or two, you learn a single song, but you have to memorize all this, lyrics that after that night, you're never going to probably need again. And I just think it's mentally very taxing and it's not a very fun experience. So I decided to create what I believe is the ultimate fun and uplifting, cathartic sing-along experience, which is now called VOMO.
What's an example of a song that you remixed to make it easier?
The first one that comes to mind is, we'll take the song What's Up by Four Non Blondes, and we pulled, of all the verses, we pulled one verse, and then and the chorus is super easy. So the parts that we do is, and I wake up in the morning and I step outside, I take a deep breath and I get real high, scream at the top of my lungs, what's going on? And then we pair it with movement. I wake up in the morning and you literally take a step, right? Take a step outside and you take a deep breath and you get real high and I scream at the top of my lungs, what's going on? And that helps it be easier to remember. And then we'll repeat that over and over and then we'll move on to the next part. And it's almost, I think it's probably like kirtan style. We're just taking a different approach at these songs.
And okay, so you have the idea, you have the concept, you've seen the concept in action, but you wanted to tweak it, right? How are you thinking about the best way to get people in the room? Because singing out loud is, I used to have a board game company, and it was just one of our first games was a spelling game, which was fun for us to try to spell words that we couldn't spell, but we later learned that people are absolutely petrified of spelling out loud in public. And I imagine singing is on that list somewhere in the top 5 things that people don't want to do out loud. So what was your hack to enticing people to come out? And who were the people you thought, if I get these people in the room, then everybody else is going to come?
I think you're absolutely right. People don't want to look like a fool. People don't want to look silly unless they're at a wedding and they've had a lot of tequila shots.
Right.
Anything works, right? One of our slogans is sing bad, feel great. And so we're really focusing on the wellness aspect of singing rather than the performance aspect. And when you get a group of people together in a room, then all the voices blend and we're not asking anyone to do a solo. So in a way, you just go at it and it's all good. And then, we've invited folks out and definitely we've heard the response that I'm not a singer, you know. And then I ask them, do you enjoy singing? And usually the answer is yes. And then they're like, well, I only do it in the shower. I only do it in the car. And I think it's around this notion that we've somehow delegated singing to Adele and Axl Rose. You know, unless you sound like that, then you shouldn't be singing, but that's not really the case, right? Maybe you shouldn't be performing, and maybe that's right, you spare everyone else, but you can certainly sing in a sing-along because you're blending in with everyone else. And you're not being judged or evaluated based on how well you're singing anyway. You're just doing it for fun. It's like, you know, none of us would be thinking, oh, we shouldn't go shoot a few hoops just because we can't sink threes like Stephen Curry or dunk like Michael Jordan, right? But we still go shoot and we don't think twice about it. And that's the same with singing, is just because you can't sing like Adele, like it doesn't matter. You can still enjoy the activity.
And now that everyone has a phone in their pocket, right? We live in a content based society. How are you thinking about capturing that content in your initial events? Because you look, let's just be honest, right? Sex sells. If people see hot girls in a place, then guys are going to want to be there as well. So how conscious were you of curating those images, those initial images, when you were first advertising or marketing the event?
Yeah, I mean, we captured content as it happened, and there were a lot of people having a really good time. And we're in LA. We're part of, you know, a lot of people are actors and models and people in entertainment. So certainly there were some good-looking people in the footage, and people were just being authentically having fun. And I watch the videos and I just smile and I'm like, oh, I want to be a part of that. Like that looks like a good time.
Were there considerations in terms of copyright or trademark of playing people's music when you're promoting it on socials?
Yeah, I don't think we're quite at that scale where we need to worry about it yet.
License somebody's song.
Yeah, at some point, we'll get into all that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you didn't even have a name when you first started doing this. You hadn't settled on a name. You just started.
The first time I did it, I called it Voga for voice yoga, but it wasn't set in stone yet. And I called it voice yoga because I wanted to make it a practice, something intentional, where these were intentionally designed vocal exercises. Most of them were top 40 songs, but there were a few other things that were just like vocal toning, where we just made a sound. So I called it Voga for about 2 months. And then people got confused because they thought they were going to get into down dog and sing, which is not the case for most of what we do. So then I went back to the drawing board over the holidays, and my brother and I were brainstorming different names. And then we thought, well, what is it? It's literally using your voice and then also your body. So there's also some movement. And so we came up with the name Voice Movement, VOMO. And it's very appropriate because there's, you know, activating your voice, activating your body. And then also we're trying to get people, like it's a movement around using your voice. And we specifically didn't want to call it anything related to singing. And we didn't want to call it anything related to dance, because that implies there's a right and wrong way to do it. And voice is just activating your voice.
Were there any other considerations in terms of, oh, this is available on as a domain, or this is available on social media, or it's too long, or it's too short, or it needs to be easy to say or spread the word or spell? Any of those considerations as well?
Yeah, so VOMO, people originally thought it sounded too like FOMO, but then it was cute because you could be like, well, you know, no FOMO, come VOMO. And definitely there was some pushback around it sounded too much like FOMO, but then we just went ahead with it anyway. I think as a leader, sometimes you have to just do things that, even though, you know, people may not think it's, you know, okay or whatnot, but sometimes you just have to push through. And so that was a moment when I had to just be like, because I think I did a poll and I think people didn't like VOMO because it sounded too much like FOMO, but even if it didn't win the popular vote, I still went ahead and did it anyway. And then it was VOMO.me, which is VOMO, Voice, Movement, and Meditation. It was based on this quote that says, in tribal cultures, if somebody wasn't feeling well, if somebody was depressed, the shaman would ask 4 questions. When was the last time you sang? When was the last time you danced? When was the last time you meditated or sat in silence? And then when was the last time you were enchanted by a story? And so that was a goal to incorporate all 4 of those aspects into these sessions. So there would be some movement, there would be some singing, there would be some meditating, and there'd be some story time. And so not always, but at many of the sessions, we try to incorporate a little bit of each. Although mostly it's around singing and then some movement and then a little meditation and maybe a story or two.
So I remember when you first started talking about this, you were already envisioning stadiums and big stages. And I'm just wondering, how important do you think that is to envision and imagine how big this could go? Is that a carryover from your Facebook years?
Yeah, I think it's just maybe as a kid, I was running around my living room pretending to be John Bon Jovi. So, maybe it's more that. But I like to work on stuff that can help a lot of people. It's just part of my nature. And so I started thinking about, okay, how do I build a concept that can reach a lot of people? So, for example, this can't be that difficult. Like we have to make everything super easy because the more technical we made it, the fewer people would be able to enjoy it, for example. And so that served as a just a guiding, like I always be like, okay, is this something we could do in a state? And if the answer came back no, then I'd be like, okay, maybe let's not do this exercise.
What were some of the things you had to prune after your first few events or add?
I actually haven't really had to prune stuff because I've been pretty intentional about it. I've definitely had other people come and try stuff at these events that I realize I'm like, it works for a 10, 20 person circle, but it's not going to work for 1,000 people or 10,000 people. They go around and have each person like sing their name or have each person, add a melody or something. But that works when you're in a small group, and those are great activities.
Right.
But they're going to be so helpful when you're in a big, arena.
I remember back when we first did the Shine, and I would have other people host the Shine because I just wanted to be behind the scenes, but I felt like it was losing the soul of the original, intention behind it. So I decided to jump in and start hosting the Shine. And then we also, had that Shine On Challenge initiative where we gave away money to someone in the audience. And I felt like that was probably one of the key elements that ended up scaling the Shine from an event that was 50 people to one that was like 400 people. Have you had any insights in regards to that kind of thing? Like, I think, we talked about the importance of reiterating the mission every time. I wasn't doing that all the time at the Shine. And then I realized I had to do that because we had new people coming all the time, and it's good to kind of enroll them in the mission and even just remind myself of the mission while I was hosting the event. What has been your experience with those kinds of elements?
So we've been positioning this as a wellness event, doing them in dance studios and yoga studios. And we haven't actually tried it at a bar or at a club where bands usually play, but I'm about to. So in a few months and let you know if that works. I feel like that pivot could unlock a lot of growth for us, but we'll see. And so I don't know yet. But I think the wellness, there's certain people that would go as a wellness event, like an alternative to yoga, for example. But part of my gut is telling me now that maybe more people would go if this was like a concert and something that you would go on a Friday night at 9 to 11, and loop to see some other, your favorite band, like you come and you're the band. And so that's just something that I'm about to go try out. We shall see.
How are you thinking about charging and prices? I know you've tried a few different things.
Yeah, we originally put a bit of a higher price because I wanted people to value the activity, and then we had some discount codes that were available. And we had a 10-piece band at one point, so that was definitely expensive. And we were renting out some really nice, huge venues. And then I realized, that was yet another barrier. I mean, some people were fine paying a higher price, but I just wanted to get people to try this. So we made it a contribute what you can, kind of a donation-based, pay what you want model. And then I think, half the people came for free. Then some people chose to donate like $10, $20, and it was fine. It's just, right now we're still in such early stage of just getting this out into the world, and we're learning along the way as well. So
Well, that's interesting. To contribute what you can. So the average was around $12 or something like that.
yeah, I think between 10 and 20. We made it like 10, like 11, 22, 33, 44, all the way up to like 111. And so there are a few people that paid like pretty up there as well, but not many. And then most people were in the 11 and 22. It's interesting psychologically, when you give people choice, but people could have gone for zero. So they didn't all go for zero, which is nice too. So they did choose to pay something, but it was on the lower side. But I don't blame them, because it's a new concept, so they don't know what they're getting. And we weren't very aggressive about after the fact saying, hey, maybe if you liked it, if you want to donate. We just wanted people to have a good experience and hopefully come back.
So are you sort of like the director of operations? Is it like a one-man sort of decision-making machine, or do you have a team or a board, or how have you structured yourself for these earlier days of the event? I'm sure it's going to grow at some point as the event grows, but what do you think is the best way to structure it?
Right now, it's just me, and I have a few people that I get advice from, and I have a few people who are part-time helping out with stuff from MyIntent. And as we grow and scale, then I'd love to, I'm considering maybe raising some money and bring on some full-time staff or professional staff. So it's all in the works, but we're only, half a year into this thing. So we're still learning, still figuring it out.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see it going in the next, say, a year from now? What's the vision for a year from now? Considering the fact that you were on the cover of Time magazine after a year and a half of starting MyIntent, what do you think could happen in this next year?
So I'd like to see us have weekly residencies at different places. So maybe a Tuesday night here or there, a Friday night somewhere else, and then maybe a Sunday morning somewhere, and have different locations where we're doing this regularly, and they're packing out, forcing us to get bigger and bigger venues. So that would be nice to see. And then eventually maybe a stadium somewhere, and then potentially taking this on the road. But I definitely want to build this in LA and build it well here first. And then as that happens, I'd like to offer a facilitator training program where we're teaching other people how to facilitate this and making it available to communities around the world. And then we're also planning on recording these tracks so people can sing along at home, even if you're not able to join us at a physical location event.
Yeah, the facilitator training that's kind of in the works now, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been figuring out how to run it and when to run it. I think I might do more of a soft launch initially, which is just a handful of people that I think are quite talented, and just start doing it together. And as we do, we'll start to figure out how to then teach it to other people. But I've been putting a lot of thought into how to teach people how to facilitate others in singing. And I've been studying all sorts of different programs to get inspiration to figure out how to design ours.
Talk about frequency. What have you discovered in terms of these events and how often you should have them?
Well, partly it starts with myself. It's how often I want to be able to lead them. So I try to do a couple a week, where I'm thinking of it as it's an opportunity for me to practice and to get my own craft. So that's one consideration. And then partly it's, how big is my infrastructure? And right now we're about to launch the official website. We're about to get the promo reel done. So we're getting all that set up. And until we have that, it's quite a bit of work to promote the event every time. But we're about to establish some residencies where it'll be every Tuesday, every Friday, every Sunday. And that way it'll be much easier. People just know that they can count on this to happen. But I think it just depends on, the person's bandwidth.
Are you generating leads in some specific way for VOMO right now, or are you just kind of co-opting the MyIntent email list and letting people know that way?
Not using the MyIntent email list because that's a list that is people from all over the world. Right now we're only in LA. So it's mostly just friends and a part of a few different West Side LA communities that are into singing and arts and so forth.
How do you encourage word of mouth? Is there something, do you tell people at the end of the events, hey, tell your friends, or is there some takeaway that they can use to entice other people to join them in the next group, or discount codes or anything like that?
Not yet. I'm mostly focused on just having a great experience for people. We will eventually, and we'll try all sorts of stuff, but we're just not there yet. Haven't really focused that much on that aspect of things.
Can you give us sort of the thumbnail version of how you grew up in Ohio, or how you even got to Ohio in the first place? Because you're not actually from there.
My parents, I was born in Taipei, Taiwan. My grandparents were refugees. My parents were refugees from China. I was there till I was 7. My parents came to the US when I was 4. And so I was raised by my grandparents from 4 to 7. And then I joined them when I was 7 to Cincinnati, Ohio. I didn't speak any English. That was quite a challenge growing up and didn't really fit in either. And then eventually made my way to, just college and ventures around the world.
Yeah. I remember growing up, back when in elementary school, going to the first day of school and being all nervous and wanting to cry and stuff, because my parents would leave me. You were going to a whole new culture. What did that feel like? Do you remember when you were like 7 years old coming to America, what that felt like, not speaking the language?
I don't remember, but I think it was hard.
Yeah.
I probably blocked it out because it was pretty traumatic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So talk about your participation in the church, in the choir. What was that? And
I found a refuge in this Cincinnati Chinese church, and was very involved during high school. I was leading the singing, as we call it, the worship services, and really found I really enjoyed that part, and considered being much more involved. Maybe even becoming a pastor at one point, because I was doing that for every Friday evening, and then every Sunday morning, I was leading people to sing.
When did you start playing the guitar?
9th grade, 10th grade, around that time.
Mm-hmm. What was the inspiration for that?
It's a good question. Just fit in. I think I enjoyed it, but also because it was cool. It was like the cool thing to do. Rock and roll was big back in the day.
Because my parents didn't play any music growing up, so I didn't know who Jimi Hendrix or anybody was. Were you listening to things back then that inspired you to say?
I remember watching a Bon Jovi video, music video, when I was in 8th grade, and thought that'd be really cool to be like that someday. On stages and singing. I remember doing "You Give Love a Bad Name," doing an impression of that in my living room, thinking that was really cool. I was watching on MTV.
Right. So when you hear stories of immigrants, you hear about how the parents were so insistent that the kid could do well in school, and that we've got a great opportunity here. What were your parents talking to you and your brother about growing up in terms of success and what that looked like?
Getting good grades, getting a good job. They wanted me to be a doctor because even in a recession, or no matter what, people are always going to be sick and you're always going to be needed. So that was the path to security. Yeah.
Well, you tried medical school out for about 5 minutes.
3 weeks, which is about 5 minutes in the grand scheme of med school for sure. It's a long journey. It's a very long path.
Was that your first time kind of carving your own path when you decided to leave medical school after 3 weeks?
Yes, I think that was the first big decision that I ever made for myself.
How'd that go over with your parents?
They took it surprisingly well. I think what happened was the med school, they give you a year to think about it, so you can actually go back. So it wasn't a complete cut, which I think helped a bit. It softened the blow a little bit. Yeah, my mom was more supportive. My dad definitely was. I think they were disappointed.
Right. But then you quickly got into business school, which must have made him feel okay with.
Perhaps, yeah. I took some business classes right away, and then started getting job offers. And the economy, I was really lucky. The economy was super hot in fall of '99. It all crashed a year later, but right at the peak of the boom of that time.
And what was your personal idea of success like at that time? How did you see your life sort of playing out? Having gone to medical school for 3 weeks, now in business school.
I don't totally remember, but I think making money was definitely part of it. The prestige of certain jobs or certain roles was exciting, and just making money. That was during the first dot-com boom when all these 22-year-olds were making hundreds of millions of dollars on paper. And so I wanted to be like one of them.
What would success look like to you with VOMO at this stage?
Getting weekly residencies that are packed,
Mm-hmm.
and getting a group of people who are also committed to doing this. So I think I'm close to finding a few other people who would be other facilitators and kind of the core team. And I'm talking to a manager of bands, for example. He might come and manage us. So part of right now is just building the team and the experiences.
Beautiful. Awesome, man. Well, I think this is an exciting time to be both a part of this, and I haven't been to one personally, as you know, but I'm excited to try out one, and just to witness you building this thing, having already built this really successful. And when I say successful, I'm not talking about monetarily successful, but just in terms of impact, right? What you did with MyIntent and the impact that you've been able to have with building that company and getting people to articulate what their word of intention was and all of that, and to have that circulate around the world and run into random people on airplanes and in all kinds of places with a MyIntent bracelet on. It's been pretty amazing to watch, especially seeing it again on the cover of Time magazine. And we go into the story, and we didn't get into that story, but it's an incredible story of how all that happened, specifically with Kanye West, who was connected with Jay-Z, who you encountered at this place in Los Angeles. And there was this really cool story behind that. So I highly recommend going back and listening to that earlier episode to go do a deeper dive into your backstory and how MyIntent happened, because there was a point in time where you were actually going to throw in the towel on MyIntent right before it really blew up. And then some very serendipitous things happened, and it ended up pivoting into a completely different stratosphere. So hopefully you don't have to have so many ups and downs with VOMO. But I think, tell me, as a final sort of question, what did you learn from the MyIntent experience that you're now applying to building VOMO? It could be related to team, it could be related to marketing, spreading, social media strategy, anything like that.
Probably just keep doing it and just keep.
That's what I was thinking. Just don't give up.
It's like unpredictable. You don't know who you're going to meet tomorrow. You don't know who's going to show up and change the course of things. You just got to keep going. There's really, yeah, I mean, definitely I'd be careful about who to bring on, scaling too fast. There's all the tactical business stuff, but I think just go with it and go with your gut, go with what feels good. I was doing MyIntent because it brought me a lot of joy. Mm-hmm. It brought me a lot of connection to other people, and it made me feel good every time I made a bracelet for somebody. Yeah. And every time I do one of these sessions, a VOMO session, it's just fun. And so I'm excited to keep doing them. And so I think just keep going.
There's also this idea about how involved you want to be, right? Like, for instance, there was an article I read with Jerry Seinfeld, who said that the reason why the Seinfeld show was so successful, I think it was the most successful sitcom ever or something like that, but he said it was because I did the opposite of what most successful entrepreneurs do, which is to outsource, to scale. He said, I was micromanaging everything. I was involved with every edit, every casting, every shot, everything he had his hands on, what's your thinking on that in terms of, because you're talking about scaling it already, facilitator programs, but also how inspired you are from being involved in the events. Are you intentionally staying very, very hands-on with all these little details, or are you kind of wanting to get people to help you with things more?
I definitely don't want to be in most of the details. I just want to focus on the music and writing, curating new things for people to sing. I enjoy that part, but I guess I have to do whatever it takes until I find the right people. But I'm definitely hoping to build the right team that can help scale it. But I definitely have a vision for it, and will be as involved as I need to be, I guess, until it happens. But yeah, it's a lot of work to be that involved. It's a lot of it. Yeah.
Say somebody's listening to this
Yeah.
and they're thinking about doing something community related. Do you have any words of wisdom for that person who's listening?
Just follow your bliss. Do it. Because the other thing I would say is, and Seinfeld, that quote reminds me a lot of Zuck. He's very involved, at least in the early days, of every aspect of Facebook. And I guess if you want to be that involved, it's a big commitment, and sure, you get a lot of success and huge impact. But also, I think in the end, it's like, do I really care? Like, I guess there's a part of me that would love to be in the stadium, but there's a part of me that's like, if I just have a group of friends that get together every week and we sing, and maybe that's fun too. And what's the trade-off of how much energy I need to expend versus in the end, I just want to sing and have fun. So it kind of depends on what the drive is and what the ultimate goal, what the ultimate intention is.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who's thinking about starting a movement, I would say, why do you want to start this movement? Is it that unique? What's unique about what you're offering? Proof of concept, is it really that interesting? And just keep doing what you enjoy.
Beautiful. Thank you, man, for coming back on to the show and sharing your experience with this new movement. We wish you lots of success. I can't wait to personally attend one. Hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later.
If you like that video, you're going to love the next one. Click this thumbnail right here, and I'll see you over there.